house in New Orleans. They call the rising sun, and it's been the ruin of many a poor boy. And God, I know I'm one.
So, this Honda VTX 1300 is maybe not necessarily a bike that I expected to have a ride. It's not really up my alley, as it were. I've never really been interested in or particularly a fan of choppers or bobbers or whatnot. It's always been very sporty and aggressive, my interest in bikes. And I thought it would be very good to kind of diversify my used bike reviews to feature the pluses and weaknesses of different style of bikes, to kind of help people figure out what they want to ride if there is any doubt in that matter. And sporty, this bike definitely isn't. It's a Honda VTX 1300 built in 2003, so the first version of this model. It was produced 2 years after, so 2004 and 5 as well. There are not really any particular issues mentioned on websites as to the quality of this bike. The 1300cc engine might allure that this would be a bike with plenty of ponies, but surprisingly it only pushes out 75 horsepower on the rear wheel. Yet what it lacks in horsepower, it definitely makes up in torque, because this baby has 123 Newton meters of torque, pushing this massive machine forward. Now, as long as you're riding, the handling of this bike is actually pretty light. You can do tight cornering on it, swivel around a bit, do a UE on roads without a problem. The only challenge handling this bike is the foot pegs. So it's got highway steps which are quite low to the ground, which mean that if you do tight cornering and you try to make it work by leaning over quite a lot, which you would normally do on shorter wheel span bikes like Nakeds, for example, the bike will not have it. You can't physically lean it over as much as you would other bikes. And then there is the low speed or push in. So if you're trying to get out of a parking spot, or if you kind of need to, drive at a speed where you need to put your feet down, the bike does feel very heavy. If it tips one way, it's quite heavy to counter it. The sharpness of its turn when stationary is, well, not as bad as I expected, but definitely a challenge. But what do you expect? It's a massive machine. So obviously this bike isn't exactly stock, so to say. It's been given a couple of modifications. I guess it's kind of taste. Like, this bike has definitely been kitted to be a sort of highway cruiser, touring machine. Well, I could see that with the amount of torque it has, a few other modifications like getting rid of most of the front end and getting rid of the bar at the passenger side, or maybe the passenger seat entirely, this bike could be made to look quite aggressive. And it would fit that description. It would fit. The engine characteristics would definitely help you do it. And if you get rid of the highway steps and kind of get pegs more in front, so a bit higher, I think you could actually significantly improve the sporty cornering of this bike as well. The suspension is quite a bit soft because obviously it's made to be comfortable, but it's predictable enough, you know, to kind of get confidence in slinging this bike into corners. And because it's quite torquey, you feel comfortable riding it at low revs. I don't have a rev meter obviously, so I have a tachometer. But you can drive it at a significantly lower RPM, which is actually quite good for the economy. I didn't expect a two-cylinder 1300 to be able to do 20 kilometers to the litre. I'll put on screen how much miles to the gallon that is, but I was actually quite surprised to do a relaxed touring session of a couple hundred miles and not run into any issues fuel consumption wise. So a couple of weeks ago I did a tour on this bike of 6 hours, and I did find that your arms get a bit sore from being upright a bit, but that's just me. Maybe my blood circulation is really bad, could definitely be. But like, the seating situation is sublime. It's so comfortable. It makes so much sense to do more miles than I usually do on this bike, seeing as how easy it is to just let them roll by. So quite surprised indeed. And it being such a big machine with a lot of chrome, and like this bike is in a very good condition. Like, optically it looks really nice. All the shiny bits are still shiny, as it were. It's I don't know, it's kind of, it made me feel a bit cool parking it on the side of the terrace while getting a beer. Like, it's a nice bike to look to. I know it's not for everyone, but it looks like an impressive machine. The large engine just showing, no plastic over it, everything shining. Feels like you're riding an impressive machine. It's definitely not as refined for sporty riding. Like, it doesn't have a certain refinement that you would see on modern super sports, for example, or modern naked bikes that feel very well calibrated and finely tuned. It's got this, you know, this Jeremy Clarkson charisma of big bangs and power, and I like it. I do, surprisingly. And now for something it isn't designed for, which will probably do well. It's gonna have to be a rolling start from 30 to 100. As I said, it just goes. And then you comfortably sit at the top speed, or not the top speed, the speed you're allowed to go. So at high speeds, so doing 120 or 75 miles an hour, it does give me a lot of turbulence around my helmet, but that is probably because I am either not tall enough to have my helmet in the wind, or too tall to have it completely behind the screen. So I reckon that if you're a bit taller, that problem would not be there, but I can't confirm it because if I could grow taller a little bit, I would, believe me. So at 5 to 6 grand, this bike is still quite expensive to buy, but it also leads me to believe that these bikes will probably hold their value quite well. And them being a Honda, they have the reliability of the rice bikes, the Japanese bikes. If I listen to what people say about these bikes, I mean, the the main arguments are it's the grunt and brunt of a massive 2-cylinder bike with the reliability of a Japanese bike. Shall we see if we can do a rolling U-turn? Should do, but slowly, because the pegs, you can't lean the bike in. It's not really that much of a problem, as though like all you need to do is not go too fast and it's fine. Like, it's got massive wheels, it's not going to fall over easily, but on a bike you would have a bit more speed and just like lean it in, and on this bike you need to be more upright. It's no issue. It's no issue at all. So don't be too bothered by the fact that this is a massive flagship or something. But yeah, so they say, it's got the brunt of a decent, massive 2-cylinder with the reliability of a Japanese-made bike. But there's also people that say that because it is a Japanese bike, it will never have the same characteristics as a European or an American. Chuffed with this bike. I think it's a bit too expensive for me, because all my bikes are a couple of £100. And the riding style just isn't really my preference. But it's a massive machine. Like, I can definitely see some happy faces riding this bike, and I've enjoyed this ride. I've enjoyed the touring rides I've done on this bike, and I would, if I had it, or like, let's say if my dad had it and I could borrow it whenever I wanted and I would go for a tour, I would definitely see me picking this bike over my Kawasaki, depending on how sporty the ride is going to be. It's a solid machine. Yeah, but again, I'm quite surprised by the economic value of these bikes. Like, they keep their value even if they've got a couple of miles on them. They do like appeal to a certain audience, so selling this bike is not going to be as easy as for example a more generic older bike. Like, you don't see a lot of people picking this up as their first bike, and not everyone can appreciate the riding characteristics of this bike, so that narrows the amount of buyers down. But they keep their value. They're not that expensive to maintain. Like, there's no disproportionate cost for parts or whatever, and apparently they are quite reliable. If you use these a lot for touring, you can easily put a lot of miles on them. So you could even say, and that is a stretch, that if you do like these kind of bikes, you could definitely do your commuter one. They're a bit luggish. I don't see myself throwing these between cars while filtering, for example, but fuel and comfort are definitely up for it. So yeah, this 2003 Honda VTX 1300 has me quite surprised in how much I like riding it. I don't know what else to say, except thank you for watching. If you have any suggestions on the kind of bike or exact make I should be reviewing next, let me know and I'll see what I can sort out. I've still got my own Diversion and Kawasaki and TDM to review. I have a couple of other bikes I could probably borrow. Maybe a Street Triple, if you're interested. But for now, this has been my my review of the 2003 Honda VTX 1300, and yeah, solid 7. Would be an 8 if it fits my riding characteristics more. So solid 7.